Welcome to The Explainer. We are looking at what is arguably one of the most dramatic political power struggles unfolding literally anywhere in the world right now. I'm talking about the intense race for the Philippine presidency in 2028. Let's just dive right in because we are witnessing the complete fracturing of a massive political alliance, the rapid rise of an opposition movement, and some truly unprecedented legal battles involving the second highest official in the land. It's a complex, high-stakes puzzle, but we're going to break it all down using the facts and data right from the source material.
So, the core question on everyone's mind right now is who is actually going to lead a deeply polarized Philippines in 2028? You'll remember back in 2022, the Uniteam alliance of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte swept into power with this massive mandate. But today, well, that alliance is completely shattered. Vice President Sara Duterte has resigned from her cabinet post, and the electorate is practically split down the middle. At the center of this, we have two major figures representing the dual pillars of this polarization, Vice President Sara Duterte and Senator Risa Hontiveros, who has really emerged as the de facto leader of the opposition. We're going to take a totally impartial look at the facts surrounding both of these leaders.
To understand exactly how we got here, we're covering 5 key areas today. 1. Contrasting electoral mandates. 2. Track records and probes. 3. Controversies and legal jeopardy. 4. Responses to public scrutiny. And 5. The road to 2028.
All right, let's start with Section 1, Contrasting Electoral Mandates.
The sheer scale of the contrast in their political bases is just staggering. Vice President Sara Duterte rode this massive populist wave back in 2022, winning the vice presidency in an absolute landslide with around 32.2 million votes. To put that into perspective, she actually outpolled President Marcos himself, no small feat. But on the exact opposite side of the political spectrum, we have Senator Risa Hontiveros. Her story in 2022 was completely different. Amidst that huge Uniteam sweep, Hontiveros was literally the lone opposition candidate to survive and win a Senate seat, pulling in over 15.4 million votes. She stood totally alone as the sole victorious progressive opposition figure, which really cemented her role as the key leader pushing back against the administration's dominance.
Moving on to Section 2, Track records and probes.
So what have they actually been doing with those mandates? Well, Senator Hontiveros has built a very distinct brand around systemic reform. Her legislative track record is extensive. She helped push through the Cheaper Medicines Law, the Mental Health Law, the Expanded Maternity Leave Law, the Expanded Solo Parents Act, and the Bawal Bastos Anti-Harassment Law. Her base definitely sees her as a relentless, highly productive lawmaker. But, she's also known for something else entirely, and that's her role as a fiscalizer.
Okay, so take a look at this 40 billion peso figure. While she was passing all those laws, Senator Hontiveros was also leading some massive Senate investigations. This specific number represents the estimated illicit gains from the Pastillas scam, which was a bribery scheme at the Bureau of Immigration that her committee uncovered. And it doesn't stop there. She also led the charge on the massive POGO investigations, specifically looking into foreign infiltration with the Alisco probe, which actually led to a nationwide POGO ban. She also spearheaded the high-profile Quibeloy and KOJC abuse probes. Basically, she built this formidable reputation for heavily scrutinizing national security threats and public spending.
Now, in stark contrast to the senator's investigative background, Vice President Duterte comes from a highly executive background. She established her reputation for tough local governance as the mayor of Davao City, succeeding her father. After winning the vice presidency, she was appointed Secretary of the Department of Education. However, her tenure at DPED came to an abrupt end in June 2024 when she suddenly resigned from the cabinet. And the timing here is key, because this resignation happened just as congressional hearings were launching into allegations about her use of government funds. So while Senator Hontiveros built her brand leading investigations, Vice President Duterte suddenly found herself the actual subject of them.
Which brings us to Section 3, Controversies and Legal Jeopardy.
This is where the political landscape shifts into totally unprecedented territory. According to the public record and the Commission on Audit, Vice President Duterte's office spent 125 million pesos in confidential funds in a span of just 11 days back in late 2022. That is a massive amount of cash to move so quickly. And it's absolutely crucial to note here that the office of the vice president under her predecessor utilized 0 confidential funds. 0. So when asked to account for how this money was spent, controversy quickly erupted over the receipts provided, leading to intense public scrutiny and ultimately a really historic legal push.
The sheer weight of the allegations that followed is completely historic. Let's look at the formal articles of impeachment. First, the alleged systemic misuse of 612.5 million pesos in confidential funds across both the OVP and the Department of Education.
Second, allegations of unexplained wealth and the alleged bribery of education officials. And third, a highly publicized incident where she allegedly made an assassination threat against President Marcos and his family. Because of these specific charges, she became the first sitting vice president and literally the first official in Philippine history to be impeached twice.
The speed of this whole crisis is just wild. Let's trace it out. June 2024, she resigns from her cabinet post. By February 2025, the House of Representatives impeaches her for the first time. Then, in July 2025, the Supreme Court actually nullifies that first impeachment on a technicality. They ruled it violated a one-year ban on multiple filings. Though, to be clear, they explicitly stated they were not absolving her of the actual charges. And sure enough, the very moment that one-year ban expired, new complaints were filed, leading to a second successful impeachment vote in the House in May 2026. The whole shebang has now been sent to the Senate for trial.
So if we directly compare their current standing right now, the contrast is incredibly vivid. Based on our source material, the Commission on Audit has still not cleared Vice President Duterte of the alleged fund misuse. The legal and audit jeopardy is very much ongoing. On the flip side, Senator Hontiveros has faced absolutely no comparable controversies. Her entire political brand is built on being that fiscalizer, the one who relentlessly scrutinizes public spending and demands accountability.
Let's move into Section 4, Responses to Public Scrutiny.
When you're a high-profile leader under the microscope, how you communicate with the public is absolutely crucial, and their communication strategies here couldn't be more divergent. Vice President Duterte has stated she would explain in her own time. She actually told one critic she doesn't deserve an explanation and has even branded critics of her confidential funds as enemies of peace. Conversely, Senator Hontiveros leans heavily into transparency. She publicly states that she maintains strict paper trails and welcomes scrutiny, which, as you'd expect, perfectly aligns with her public persona as an investigator.
Which leads us right to our final section, the road to 2028.
Now, you might naturally assume that a historic double impeachment would be the end of a political career, right? Well, not quite. The polling data tells a completely different story. As of March 2026, W Numero opinion polling for the 2028 presidential race shows Sara Duterte actually maintaining a commanding lead at 35.9%. Independent Senator Raffy Tulfo is sitting in second place at 19.4%. Meanwhile, the progressive and liberal opposition figures, including those aligning under Hontiveros, still remain somewhat fragmented, trailing in the single digits, though we know they are actively working to unify around a single standard-bearer by the end of 2026. But the big takeaway here? The populist base remains incredibly loyal to the Duterte brand, regardless of the headlines.
And that leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative question. Will dynastic populism survive these historic legal challenges and propel Sara Duterte straight to the presidency? Or will the sheer weight of these controversies finally take their toll, allowing Senator Risa Hontiveros and a unified opposition to completely redefine the Philippines in 2028? The lines are officially drawn. The trial in the Senate looms large, and you can bet the electorate is watching every single move. What you should really take away from all this is that the traditional rules of politics are quite literally being rewritten in real time. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on the data as this incredible story continues to unfold.